Michigan stinks!
Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, November 25th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and now let's get down to brass tacks and talk about the game tomorrow. Michigan at Ohio State, high noon, will be televised by ABC. Bax, first thing, what do you expect will happen with the quarterback situation at Michigan? Early in the week, I thought it was a complete smokescreen. I thought Wilton Speight was out, John McCorn was going to play, but now I've changed my mind. It sounds like, talking to the Michigan guys, that Wilton Speight's going to give it a go, at least try to. Are you buying that? Just what's your take on their quarterback situation?
Yeah, I don't buy it whatsoever. I think Wilton Speight is not going to play, and this is all grand strategery trying to get the OSU staff to have to prepare for two quarterbacks and to mess with the preparation from the Buckeyes. Harbaugh is crazy enough to do something like that, and honestly, I can't even blame him because they're very different players in a lot of ways. McCorn's way more mobile than Speight, but Speight actually could throw a pass. So yeah, I just don't buy it. Until I see Wilton Speight run on the field and take a snap, I won't believe he's going to play. And even if he runs on the field and takes a snap, I kind of think that's ridiculous considering he supposedly has a broken collarbone. I mean, how irresponsible would that be to let the kid play? But, you know, we'll have to see, I guess. But I don't believe that it's going to be anybody other than John O'Corn. And, of course, your Bill Peppers and maybe even Sugar Shane Morris playing for the Wolverines under center in this game.
Let's go through all 9 units and compare Ohio State against Michigan, individual position groups. We'll start with a real tough one, not at all. Quarterback. Who has the edge in this game?
I mean, I'm sorry. I know there's some people who've been grumpy because JT hasn't been as accurate lately as we'd like. He's 24-3 as a starter. He's beat them twice already, and hopefully will a third time tomorrow. So, yeah, that's Ohio State.
Running back, also not a tough one. Although Davion Smith is coming on, who has the advantage at running back?
OSU. I don't know how anybody on national television could have given the edge to that school up north in this one. Greg McElroy. I think it's just ridiculous that you'd say that Mike Weber is a 1,000-yard runner. And by the way, we're going to include Curtis Samuel in this group too. I'm sorry, those guys are clearly better than Devion Smith and Chris Evans and Karan Higdon and Ty Isaac. I mean, they're a decent backfield. If Devion Smith had the game of his career against Indiana to drag him to a win, and I think Evans has potential to be a pretty big-time player. But remember, Evans was a kid who was dying for an OSU scholarship offer and didn't get it because OSU just didn't know where he'd get on the field. Truth be told, OSU, DeMario McCall would start up there right now. Let's put it that way. I haven't even included him. OSU is a way better tailback position than that school up north.
Wide receiver. Now, this is a tricky one because if you include Curtis Samuel, that really raises the Buckeyes up. If you don't have Curtis Samuel in the wide receiver group, if you have him in the running back group, that really brings Ohio State's wide receivers down. So who has the advantage at wide receiver?
Are we including tight ends? Because if we're including tight ends, then they get to include Jake Butt, and that helps them too.
No, tight end is a separate one.
All right, we'll keep them separate. We'll let them win that one ahead of time, so we don't even need to bring that one up. I would say this one's closer to a draw purely because I don't think Noah Brown's got nearly the time with the football that he needed to. Darbo and Chesson are pretty good players. I think OSU certainly has more talent before people flame me on the front row. But based on production right now, unless we get Oklahoma game Noah Brown, right now you kind of have to lean towards saying maybe that's school up north just because Darbo and Chesson have made the plays that they've made this year. I still think OSU is a much more talented set of wide receivers, but production-wise, and if you don't include Samuel, let's call it a draw right now. I think this is a position of strength for either team, though.
And as you mentioned, Michigan has the advantage at tight end with Jake Butt, much better than Marcus Ball. Marcus Ball's coming on, but Jake Butt's going to be
he hurdled the guy. Give him credit. He hurdled the guy. Even though
he hurdled the guy. I like
better
it.
Player.
I think Jake Butt's probably going to be a late first-round pick, so probably the second tight end taken in the draft after O.J. Howard. So obviously Michigan has the advantage there. Last offensive group, offensive line. Both teams have struggled at times on the O-line. Who has the advantage on the O-line?
Yeah, so this is a tough one here because the Buckeyes, this is the one part of the offensive unit that we've really criticized at times this year. And I'll admit, my biggest fear, I had a nightmare about this last night after eating all my turkey, was that Isaiah Prince was getting turnstiled the whole game again. I still can't forget the way Penn State destroyed him. That said, across the board, I think OSU has a better O-line. Pat Elflein is one of the best players in the country inside. The guards have played pretty well this year. I think Michael Jordan is going to be extremely motivated to play well against his home state school. And Jamarco Jones has been very solid at left tackle. Whereas their line, look, they've had times this year where they've had a lot of trouble establishing the run against inferior opponents. And I can't give Kyle Kalis credit for anything at this point. So I'm going to take the Buckeyes in a narrow one here.
I'll give Kyle Kalis credit for making a bad decision. Let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. Really the strength of both teams. The strength of both teams is really the defensive line. I mean, both of these teams have good starting defensive lines. Both of them have backup defensive lines that a lot of those guys would be starters at most programs across the country, especially Ohio State. I keep bringing up Nick Bosa as a backup. Jalen Holmes is a backup. Robert Landers is a backup. Those have been like maybe the three best defensive linemen on the team this year, at least three of the best. Who has the advantage when you compare these defensive lines backs?
I agree with you. Their D-line is really the one part of their team that makes me go, that's a good group of players. You have to look at the way that their D-line is played. I think Taco Charlton's way better as a college football player than I expected seeing him come out of school. He was one of those recruits that looked like he was going to be one of the, looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane players, but he's been a lot better than that, and I have to give him credit for it. But you have to also talk about Ryan Glasgow when you talk about their D-line. He did not play against the Buckeyes last year, so when everybody talks about how OSU ran the ball all over him, we had Zeke last year, and Zeke Glasgow didn't play. That's a big difference. So they have a very good D-line. I think OSU has a deeper D-line. I mean, you just mentioned Jalen Holmes isn't a starter, and I literally went, oh, yeah, he isn't a starter, because I'm so used to seeing him on the field making big plays. So this is a tight one, and this is clearly, I think, the best unit between the two teams. I think the Buckeyes have a small edge on this one, purely because I think they have better depth on the D-line than that School of North does. And I think they're a little bit more explosive. I mean, nobody ever talks about Tyquan Lewis, and he's the guy who's going to be a high NFL draft pick whenever he goes. So I'm going to lean the Buckeyes here, but this is almost a true toss-up between these two. A lot of people have said that they've caught up to Ohio State in terms of overall talent. I think that's insanity. But on the D-line, they're right up there with the Buckeyes. I will give them full credit for that one.
Linebacker, Buckeyes, Chris Worley, Raekwon McMillan, Jerome Baker, Wolverines, Ben Gideon, Jabril Peppers. I'm finally pronouncing his first name right. I was always called him Jabril, but Michigan people call him Jabril, so I finally have it right. It's Jabril Peppers. And Mike McCray, son of former Buckeye Mike McCray Jr. Who has the advantage at linebacker?
Well, Jabril Lee is a safety, not a linebacker, so I don't know why they did that to him this year. But I'm giving the edge to Ohio State because Jabril Peppers is a much better kick returner and defensive back than he ever is at linebacker. I mean, one of the things I hope the Buckeyes do in this game is try to run Mike Weber right at him because he's not great against the power run. Meanwhile, Gedion's a little slow. McCray's a little slow. There's a reason those guys left Ohio and weren't really pursued by the Buckeyes. Gedion was one of those guys that may or may not have had an offer right around the time that the whole Tatgate thing was happening. McCray was a very, very late offer after OSU missed on some other kids and felt pressure to take an alumni kid. I'm not thoroughly impressed with their linebackers, and I say that being fully aware that Ohio State linebackers haven't been perfect this year either. I think Worley's had a fantastic year, but both Baker and McMillan have a ton to prove to me in this game because both of them have had issues getting off of blocks. And for all the potential that Baker has and for all the hype that Raekwon gets, these guys have to be, those two may be the biggest players in this game for OSU, that they have to show that they can get off blocks. And I think that's one thing that's really helped that School of North linebackers look so well is that their D-line has taken up so many blockers that they're a little more free to make plays. So right now, I'm going to give the edge to Ohio State because I think Jabrili, he should be playing at safety, not linebacker. And I think the other two are a little slow. So small edge to the Buckeyes on this one. Again, it's fairly close, but I think Ohio State has the benefit from the fact that they actually have three linebacker-sized guys in this group.
At corner, both teams are loaded. Buckeyes have a couple of NFL draft picks at corner with Marshawn Lattimore, Garyon Conley, early NFL draft picks. And Jordan Lewis is one of the best corners in the nation for Michigan. They also have Channing Stribling, who's been hot and cold this year. Who do you give the edge at corner?
Well, edge at corner goes to OSU purely because they have two elite corners, not one. Jordan Lewis is awesome. There's no arguing that. I hate the School up north, but I always try to give them fair credit. Jordan Lewis is excellent. There is zero denying that. In my opinion, outside of Ryan Glasgow, he's their best defensive player. And he's going to be a high-level draft pick. The reason I give not true. Jabril will be a high pick from somebody who's going to get all excited like people did about Johnny Manziel. All the hype and not a lot of the actual hey, where are we going to actually play this guy at the next level? Jabril's going to be, he's going to be like Desmond Howard, great kick returner, not much else. But anyways, I digress. I look at it like this, though. Ohio State has 2 first-round caliber corners in Lattimore and Conley. In fact, Lattimore seems to be the number 1 corner on the board according to a lot of these draft, prognosticators. So when you have 1 of something or 2 of something, 2 is usually better than 1. And Ohio State has 2, and that makes them better. And by the way, they don't have a stribling-like weakness out there. If OSU can get Curtis Samuel on a stribling, they are going to eat a lot. Like, it's going to be Zeke Elliott in a giant pan of cereal if they get that matchup. So I think OSU has the advantage in the secondary. It's a very good Wolverine secondary. Their safeties are pretty strong. I don't think they have anybody on the caliber of a Malik Hooker either. But as good as Jordan Lewis is, he's not. The rest of his secondary mates are not as good as the rest of the secondary at OSU.
Now, those are the 9 position groups. We went through all of them. Let's throw in special teams as well. I know when Urban talks about 9 units strong, he's talking about those 9 position groups. But special teams, it could come down to special teams. It often has in this game. Overall, punting, kicking, returning, who do you give the edge in special teams?
Buckeyes have the edge in place kicking. Their kicker up north has missed a couple field goals this year in key situations. The Wisconsin game, he missed 3 field goals. People forget that part. I think in the punt return game, they have the edge because their punt returners can actually catch the punt. Not to mention Jabril Peppers can return it. So that's where he's easily the most dangerous, to be very honest, is the football in his hands. If you ever watched Peppers' high school film, I was pretty convinced he was best suited in college to play a running back or like a H-back kind of position versus actually being a defensive player. But they have the edge in the punt return game. The kickoff return game is a coin flip because nobody's really done a ton either side of the ball. And I think OSU is better in kick coverage than that school up north is. Punting game, the Buckeyes have Cam Johnson, so this shouldn't even be a discussion. So we just mentioned 6 different aspects of special teams, and I think OSU has an edge in 4 of them. So edge to the Buckeyes.
All right, brass tacks, let's give some predictions here. Final score, how's it going to play out, Bax?
All right, so the way I look at this playing out is that, like everybody else, I've been checking the weather widget all week to make sure that it's above 40 degrees and there's not a wind so that JT doesn't be afraid that he's going to throw the ball and the wind's going to blow it away or something. Because as ridiculous as it seems, Ohio State seems to have an issue playing in the elements this year. It's Ohio State. We play Big Ten football. I don't know how it's possible, but it is. To me, based on the fact the weather's going to be good, I think Urban's going to be a little bit more aggressive. And for all the hype we've heard about that school up north holding back all kinds of packages and everything for their offense in this game, do you think Urban doesn't have a few tricks up his sleeve either? So I think the Buckeyes are going to come out. They're going to throw the ball successfully in the early going, and that's going to allow them to actually move the football. I think there's no way in hell that they let Curtis Samuel not play a major role in this game. I think the Buckeyes get out to a couple early scores. That school up north is going to get a little bit of offense in this game. I think what's going to happen is be fairly close until you have a Malik Hooker pick 6 late in the game to put it away. And I'm picking the Buckeyes to win 31-20.
I have a very similar score. I have the Buckeyes winning 28-20. I don't care if they win by 1 point. Just win, baby, because they are in the college football playoff if they win this game. And I'm actually going to root for, if Ohio State wins, I'm rooting for Penn State to win too, because Ohio State doesn't need to win the Big Ten championship game. They're in.
There's no reason. There's no reason. This is the downside of the championship games that the Big 12 never talked about when they were complaining about getting left out. You don't have to play the second best team in your league or the best team in the league if you're the second best team at the end of the year without a championship game. For OSU, like, all the playoff stuff aside, you just have to beat Michigan. That's all that matters is beating Michigan. But from a playoff perspective, if you're OSU, you absolutely want Penn State to play Wisconsin because you don't have to risk losing a game against a good Wisconsin team that if they beat Penn State, may be in the playoffs themselves. So, yeah, go Bucks. Beat the Blue, and then let's hope Penn State knocks it off, and then the Buckeyes can happily sit back and get the 2 or 3 seed in the playoffs, and we can play Clemson on New Year's Eve.
Great stuff as always from the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Really appreciate it, Bax, and thanks to our listeners out there for tuning into the show. Hope you have a great day, and I know you'll have a great weekend if the Buckeyes take care of business tomorrow. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.